Are we ready to get started, or are we?
Oh, you might just wait
waiting another couple minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. I know. I believe Tom is not able to make it, and Bridget and Beth might be coming late. So with that, we'll see.
Hey, Brian, nice of you to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello, Kristen Sealing.
Is 5 a quorum, Rachel or Laura?
Yes, it is.
I think we have 5.
Yes.
Should we go ahead and get started then?
You may go right ahead, Robin.
All right, thanks. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Kansas City Climate Protection Steering Committee. I see, should I do a quick roll call to just see who's here and who's not? Starting with Michael Kelly.
Here.
Bill Griffith.
Here.
Bridget Sanderson. Beth Pauley. Angela Crawford.
Here.
Kristen Ryat.
Here,
Ryat, sorry.
That's all right.
Ellen Fairchild. And Tom Graver. Okay. So, all right. Well, hopefully a couple more will join us as we go along, but we'll go ahead and get started. Just a couple of quick things before we dive into the agenda. I just wanted to take a second to reflect on this moment now that the COP26 in Glasgow is over. It's easy to get focused on, the news that the commitments by their own admission are not enough, but I'm staying focused on the good news that here at the local level, we don't have to limit our ambitions to what they agreed to, and that we have an opportunity to do much better and be leaders and lead by example. So, Andy, should I I was going to make an announcement about the upcoming workshops, if that's all right, while we have folks on here in the beginning.
Okay.
I just wanted to make an announcement for everyone who's on the call that, in case you hadn't heard, that the climate planning process is moving into the stage where strategies are going to be prioritized, and the city's organizing several topical work groups to be held in mid-December. So if you're following this planning process along on the website, you can sign up for one of those topical work groups. If anybody has the link to that and wants to post it in the chat for folks, that would be great.
I think Laura has just dropped it in the chat.
Oh, great. So. Thanks, Laura. So I think we're going to be talking more later in the meeting about what those will entail. But if there's a particular area you're affected by, or that you're knowledgeable or passionate about, please go online and sign up for those. And I also wanted to just take 1 minute to acknowledge that Jerry Schechter, the sustainability coordinator for KCMO, has announced his retirement. So, Jerry, is this your last meeting with us?
Yeah, this is my last meeting as a city staff person, yes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
I don't know if that's a warning or what.
No, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry I didn't get much of a chance to work with you as a staff member, but I know you missed, and I hope you'll stay involved in the work for a more sustainable Kansas City with us. And I don't know if anybody else wanted to say anything today, but I know you're
Well-
going to have multiple celebrations. But
Yeah, this is Michael Kelly. I'll just say very, very quickly, Jerry, you have been a very, very great person to work with, very insightful, very knowledgeable, very helpful, not just with the Climate Protection Steering Committee, but also with the Environmental Management Commission. It really has been a pleasure to work with you and to learn from you about all of the efforts that the city is doing to improve its sustainability. And so I echo Robin's point and hope that you'll be able to continue serving and working with us as even in your retirement. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
And I believe we sent out the invitation today for his retirement reception. So if you haven't seen it, let me know. But and or Rachel, if you can post something about that, that'd be great.
all right. Well, congratulations again, Jerry. And we hope to keep seeing you, though. Okay. With that, we can, I think, get into the agenda. The October minutes, both sets of them, have been distributed. So I just wanted to ask if there's any corrections on those that anyone had. And if not, could I get a motion to approve them? I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second.
Would anyone like to second? Okay. Okay. All in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. Next on our agenda is public comment. So if anyone from the public has anything they'd like to say at this time, please raise your hand and keep your remarks to about a minute or so if you can. I'll also say that we're also going to be monitoring the chat throughout the meeting. So if you have any questions or comments along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. I see, I'm not sure if I can see all the hands up, but I think Beto had a hand up.
Yeah, hi. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Beto. I'm the Executive Director of Clean Air Now here in Kansas City. And I guess my comment is just more of an invitation to all of you to our event happening on November 17th, 2 p.m. And actually, there's two events, one at 2 p.m. and one at 6 p.m. The 6 p.m. will have Spanish translation, but the virtual meeting is titled Health, Equity, and Environmental Justice in Kansas City. So it'll be a virtual discussion about focusing on the cumulative impacts of pollution, also climate justice and health equity. So we'll have presenters from the Office of Environmental Justice from the EPA in DC, talking a little bit about some of the programs right now at the EPA at the federal level, but also how they can impact local decision making in our community in Kansas City. So I would love to invite all of you there, see you all there. And so you can go to our website, cankc.org, and you'll find the registration link on our website under blogs. We don't have like this really nice website yet, but you'll find the information. You just go to blog, it'll be the first link on top where you can register. And so if not, you can go to bit.ly at EJ4KC and you'll find the registration link there for the 6 p.m. So yeah, I'm looking forward to participating in this committee and being involved in the next several months, being involved more. So thank you.
Thanks, Beto. Is anyone? I don't see any other hands raised. Am I missing anyone?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, great. All right, well, then let's move on to our next topic. We are thankful to have City Manager Brian Platt here to share information with us about the solar array project that's just been announced and any other priorities related to climate action you'd like to share with us, Brian. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thanks everyone for having me. I'll try to be brief. The group here has given some great guidance on our LED streetlight project, our electric city vehicle policy, and we're certainly looking forward to discussing the solar project at the airport in more detail. I'll be very honest about the timing of everything. We leaked some of this to the news before we really had any plans, just so when we went to meet with people in DC and we're having some other conversations at higher levels, we would have something to point to and sort of like try to force everyone to sort of not be able to say no to this sort of thing. We've been talking about this for months, and a lot of finger pointing, as you can imagine, at every level of government. It's FAA saying no, oh no, it's the airlines, oh no, it's this person, that person. And so the strategy was, let's just get some public support and get it out in the news and then go from there. But we've got some conversations to have with this group and with everybody. The process right now is we're doing a feasibility study based on the work that Olson has already done for solar at the airport previously. There was a potential for solar being driven by Evergy on the new airport terminal and the parking deck that they have decided to not pursue anymore. That's an Evergy decision. Nothing to do with us. And they're building on that to see, in essence, what we can do with the thousands of acres of undeveloped land at the airport. We've got about 5,000 acres of land that we have otherwise no use for at the airport. Not saying that all of it can be used for solar, but let's see what we can do. I mean, there's really not a lot of other options up there. And we want to think big and bold about climate change and energy independence and resiliency of our energy grid. Thinking about the brownouts and blackouts we had this year in February because of cold weather in Texas. We need more energy production facilities locally, and we need ways to build redundancy and battery backups and that sort of thing. And we've just got to start thinking about it and doing some due diligence on this. But also think about carbon emissions of our energy production here in Missouri. 70% of energy produced in 2020 in Missouri was from coal, from burning coal. And so we've got a huge opportunity to do better here. We've been throwing around some numbers publicly, but we have no idea how much energy this thing's going to produce. The feasibility study is going to help us better understand that as far as exactly how many of those acres we can use, exactly the energy output. We don't know, to be honest. I mean, you're probably going to see articles that say it could be 300 megawatts. I think it could be maybe 1,000 megawatts. One of the groups that we've been talking to is NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab. They're a subsidiary of the Federal Department of Energy. And they're the experts at doing this sort of thing at this scale. And we're contracting with them to give us some guidance. They've told me that the general rule of thumb, maybe I don't know if this is right, but 4 to 7 acres per megawatt if you're just looking at open field. So you think about 4,000 acres, and if it's 4 acres per megawatt, that's 1,000 megawatts. I mean, we could be in that range, but we're not trying to set us up for that emotional failure. And so I think whatever we get out of it is going to be a win, no matter what, because right now we're getting nothing out of it. And right now we have very little solar in the area, and we're just trying to think critically about this. As far as how we move forward after the feasibility study, the thought in general is to just issue an RFP and do some sort of private development in partnership with Evergy, where a developer comes in, builds the solar array, manages it, maintains it, charges Evergy for the energy they produce, and they pay for it themselves. Ideally, there's no cost increase to ratepayers. Ideally, the city doesn't have to pay a dime for it, that the project just makes money for itself. But who knows? It's going to require, this project would inevitably require additional transmission lines, a new substation, a lot of other infrastructure in the area. And we don't know what all those costs are yet. And one of the reasons why we haven't had a conversation with this group yet is because we just don't know where we're going with it yet. We're waiting to see what that feasibility study says before having more to see what the decision points are. We have no decisions to make at this point. But Evergy, believe it or not, because we got in the news the way we did, has come full circle on this, and they're super supportive. We're excited to be working with them on this. Had a couple of great meetings with senior leadership there, and we have a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks to talk about the direction, and they've got some ideas of how to make it very simple for us as a city and to get some big wins out of it and to avoid some of the sort of bureaucratic roadblocks that we would otherwise see from something like this. At a certain scale, I'm sure some of you know, that the amount of energy produced triggers approval from the state board of utilities, and you become like an energy service provider, and there are ways to not have to do that so quickly. That could be a multi-year process, but we can certainly. I think we have a possibility of getting shovels in the ground in 2022 and getting something moving soon. But we're still sort of, a lot can happen, a lot of variables, a lot of discussions to be had with this group and with a lot of others about how we're going to move forward here. So I'll stop there with all my rambling. Curious if anyone's got any questions or anything else. Yes, Bill.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Yeah, a couple things. One, how much are you all looking at battery storage for the facility as well?
That is absolutely one of the components of the feasibility study, and of course that's the more expensive part of it, and that's a big desire of ours. So I would say if you're going to rank the sort of top things that our objectives for this project, one is decarbonize our energy supply, and the other is resiliency. And the resiliency piece comes with battery storage and creating a local energy supply that we can use to not have to rely on like something going on in Texas. But yeah, long story short, the battery backup is huge. What'll likely happen after the conversations we've had hearing, we'll probably end up doing battery storage at satellite locations rather than all at the airport. It just seems like maybe there's a different, I don't know all the details of this, but yes, long story short, yeah, we're absolutely thinking about it.
Okay, great. And the second question there is, this would be faster if there's a way around the Public Utility Commission as far as their okaying process. Not saying their process isn't needed, it certainly is, but anything that can be done to, where the city is providing the power is certainly something to look at. And I know the committee here is looking at some options that other places are doing, and we want to have further conversations with the city on that in the future, but not at this point yet. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I'll just say that it sounds like maybe instead of thinking about this as like a hundreds of megawatt single site, maybe it starts off as 3 or 4 community solar level projects that are like 10 or 20 megawatts that connect into different points along the grid. And that may be the loophole, but we still have to have some conversation with Evergy because they're the experts in this, but totally. Jeremy has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to ask if you had any insights on the landside and airside electrification that might come along with this, if that's something you can talk to.
As far as what, like where the power goes?
Operations, equipment, all of the bag loaders, the little carts that drive around, the buses,
at the
just
airport.
Thinking about if we're creating electric sources,
yes.
Are we creating a use too?
Yes, absolutely. The airlines are very interested in this sort of thing, and this would give them the incentive to move faster in that direction. We have our electric vehicle policy actually covers the airport. It's just a question of, are there electric options for all of the machines that drive around the airfield? And, I think if we had a solar field powering not just the airport, but the region, we don't know exactly how much it's going to cover, but Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we're looking into. Let's see. Anyone else questions? Looking through the chat here. Let me just. Okay, Raymond's got a question on energy independence. So it's Evergy. It has the monopoly, I guess, over energy distribution. The independence comes from having our own sources locally here that we can use in the case that there's a regional challenge, like we had with the Southwest Power Pool in February of last year. If we can point to a source that we've got that is like a Kansas City-based thing, we may be protected from issues outside of our grid. We have our own little microgrid and redundant energy source. So that's sort of the direction. It is, not so simple, I'd say, but it's certainly a step in that direction. Yeah, a couple of energy. Come on. Bill has got another hand up, it looks like.
Yeah, didn't Evergy also promise that the airport, the new terminal, would be powered by renewables?
Yes, yes, they did, and they also have been assisting us with making sure that city operations are powered by renewable energy. The challenge is that, a lot of what we were depending on was a wind farm in Kansas, and that wind farm project is having some challenges. Evergy was also looking at community solar at the airport, and that project also fell through. So we're just taking it into our own hands here, in a sense. We're sort of the hesitancy at the federal level is sort of an indication for us that we just have to do something. We have to do something aggressively and big, and so that's where we're at with it.
Right, but certainly they're not mutually exclusive. We could have the wind power from Evergy and the solar array from the city as possibilities there. Just wanted to be clear on that. Okay,
we will not power the entire city from this solar. I mean, maybe. No. I don't think.
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No, you won't.
Yeah. So yes, we're going to need other power, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And then Layla, hand up.
Hi, City Manager. I'm glad you're here with us today. I just had a question about, I did ask, hearing more about the vision for energy independence, and you did answer that, and I appreciate that. And my next question would be, what is the impact this is going to have on everyday people in Kansas City? Do we expect for it to lower their rates, and how important is that to you in the city moving forward? I mean, from my perspective, we oftentimes think it is important to think of the climate crisis in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and resiliency, and those are things that we don't often see and feel. But I also believe if we are truly taking a pro-climate perspective, people will feel it. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, what can this field do, and how will you protect it?
So there is a big health benefit to, of course, reducing carbon emissions and air quality and pollution here, and that is probably the main objective. The cost, we would say that we're not necessarily doing this to cut rates in half or cut them significantly, but we think we can balance stable or lower rates from a more efficient process with all of these additional climate benefits. There is certainly an efficiency to be had from having energy production as close to the end user as possible. It takes less infrastructure to push the energy, the electrons to wherever you're using it, and that makes it cheaper in a sense. Hopefully, there's also like sort of less, it's maybe a more efficient business structure to have it on city land here as well. But we're still trying to figure out what the numbers are going to be. I mean, those are decision points we're going to need to make. I'm sure that there's going to be an inflection point of where we think we want to build a certain amount of battery backup, and the cost to do that translates into a raise in our energy rates. And maybe that's something we have a conversation about with this group. Is it worth certain other benefits to keep rates at a certain rate or raise them slightly, or do we want to lower them? And I'm not going to say that I'm going to force the city into a decision there. I think we need to have conversations around that. Cool.
All right.
Anyone else? Bueller.
Well, I don't think there are any more questions, and I think we also have to get on to some of our other things. So I think just want to thank you, Brian, again for coming and speaking with the group about the solar panels and answering the questions. Obviously, we're interested to learn more about this process as it's going forward. So thank you again.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. All right. Next up on our agenda, we are going to be hopefully voting on a letter to recommend certain actions around the building codes. We discussed this back in our first October meeting. And so I sent around a letter for the committee's consideration. So my hope was that we could vote on the content of that letter today and then send our recommendations off to council. So did anyone have any? So I guess that would be my motion, but does anyone have any anything they'd like to discuss about that?
I don't have anything to offer. I think that the letter is good, and I hope that the city council moves swiftly to adopt the IECC. So if there's no comments or anything, I'll go ahead and make a second to Robin's motion to adopt the language of the letter and send it to council.
Thank you, Michael. So all in favor of doing that, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes, and we'll get that letter off to council. And hopefully we'll see that come to council soon. All right. The next item is prioritization framework for the climate protection and resiliency plan. I believe Laura was going to have some information to share. Laura, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, hello. So now that we're in the, I'll just tee you up and then turn it over. But now that we're moving into the prioritization phase of the planning process, Laura's here to just talk us through how that's going to work a little bit and let us kind of talk through that. So, Laura?
Okay, so excuse me, the Climate Protection Steering Committee, I apologize, you received information so late. Brendel has been working really, really hard on getting everything up and running for these meetings. But of course, the first thing is we are having these topic area work groups that were mentioned earlier on in the meeting. Those topic area work groups are where we're really rubber's gonna meet the road, and we're needing people to attend those sessions that can add value on the strategy prioritization and also give us insight into what groups could help with that prioritization, and then also any unintended consequences, because we are trying to do this plan from a place of environmental justice. So we need to make sure that that is a big thing here. Sorry, there's somebody at my door. Hello. Of course, my little one comes home right at this time. I'm presenting, dude. Okay, so Brendel had sent over, and I will share my screen real quick for everyone to see here. They had sent over this strategy evaluation example. So earlier, the Climate Protection Steering Committee sent a table on to me that I forward on to the Brendel Group that was the Ann Arbor based plan on how they were determining their strategy prioritization. So this that you see in front of you, is it big enough everyone can see it? I hope. I can't see you guys now that I'm presenting. I'm at home on my one screen.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So this is just a mock-up. They just put a few in to kind of show you what this would look like. So the way we're going to be doing this is they're planning to pre-populate all of these columns, A through K, based on their internal analysis. This is what they do all the time for a living. And so they've been doing this with other organizations for quite a while. So knowing that the GHG emissions reduction potential and mitigation costs, they're not going to put numbers with all of these strategies right away. They're just going to give you a high, low, moderate, because we only have enough funding really to actually put really good numbers to the strategies we're going to move forward with. So pretty much all of the strategies that they've been hearing online, and then those strategies that are also in the regional plan that are relevant to Kansas City will be populated in a table very much like this. So when we get into these strategy sessions, you're going to see the strategy name, and then you're going to see these various columns, whether it's, it's reduction potential, it's cost per ton, mitigation effectiveness, so how much carbon it's actually reducing per strategy. And then you're going to see these cross-cutting resilience themes as well. So if it's going to build resilience to extreme heat or flooding or other impacts. And then they're going to have these other co-benefit areas as well that they're going to pre-populate all the way up to K. So all of these will already be pre-populated when we get into the meetings, because there's just so many strategies. We couldn't do this in this one meeting if we didn't have it already done like this. And then columns L through Q will be populated from the community workshops and the online, what we're hearing online through our engagement platform. So they're supporting actions that we could do to help these strategies. Is it something the city can lead by example on? And then we have been doing this in Northland, Central, Southland sort of format throughout this process, just to see where we're getting the most support. So whether or not there's high-low support in each of these areas, and then of course community-wide support for it. So like some of these larger ones, and they only populated this first one because they haven't fully fleshed this out yet. It's still in process. But this particular one, which was to increase the renewable energy mix, high support in the Northland. They don't have anything for the Central yet. It's a low in the Southland. But then community-wide, that's going to be a really big strategy in the end. So then existing and related efforts to leverage, that's what we're already doing. Are there anything already going on in Kansas City that is going to be useful for this, or anything we know of coming down the pike from the utility companies or other organizations? And then the next one is going to be, we're going to be discussing as a group when this should happen. So is this something we can work on immediately and get moving immediately? Is this something that's near term, which is we have a 2025 goal to meet, midterm, which is up to our 2030 goal, and then our final sequencing will be the 2040 goal. They're also going to be asking in the meetings for who could help, who are going to be the implementation leaders on this. So what organizations are going to be able to help us implement this process? And then who's actually a good partner to help implement this process? So who's going to hold the strategy and who's going to partner on the strategy? And then here we're going to talk about as well the barriers to implementation. That's the equity consideration. Are there going to be unintended consequences to any particular group based on this strategy? And then of course, city staffing. If it's something the city can be a part of and staff, then are we going to staff it, and what's this cost to the city going to be? And then funding opportunities ongoing. So how can we fund this up front? How can we fund this long term? This is kind of going to be all, so everything here in the bluish purple is what we're going to really talk about and break down in those strategy sessions. And there's going to be one of these sort of spreadsheets put together for each of the areas. This, of course, is the utility area, but we'll have one for mobility, food, healthy homes, all those kind of things as well. And so then we're going to, once we get this done and we get the strategies figured out, well, I guess this is a good place to stop. Does anybody have any questions on their strategy, just kind of the strategy matrix on how we're going to run these meetings at this point?
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you say the community will populate, I'm hearing myself echo. Do you guys hear that too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to just keep going. Hopefully that'll go away. So the upcoming workshops are going to be what informs those certain columns, or was it from the work that's already been done?
So good question. So the work that's already been done, the climate strategy sessions are going to, that's going to inform this column here, what those strategy names are. So, and we're going to have those from the things that have already occurred, our online and in-person strategy sessions, and our Bang the Table ideas. One of the things that we did talk about is the potential supporting actions that will come with that strategy. So for every strategy we're going to have in this plan, we're going to also then have like areas underneath them, like how can we do this? How can we go through and support this? So those supporting actions are going to be found for the strategy based on what we've already heard in the other strategy sessions. So people came up with these particular ideas when we said, how can we help support this? This is what came up in those online community strategy sessions. So this will be populated from online stuff, and then, but during the session, so yeah, this will, all of this section here, L through Q, is going to be populated from the online sessions and the in-person sessions we've already had with community. And then everything from R on to X is going to be what we work on in those topic-based work groups.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I think I saw other questions. Yes. Or folks raising their hands.
Looks like I saw Michael come up.
And Jeremy.
Yes. And then I'll give it to Jeremy. But Laura, thank you again for the presentation. I did have a quick question. When it comes to the conversations that are happening, is it possible for you guys to also share, like, generally speaking, kind of the breakdown in terms of GHG emission sources? Because I think that also helps to inform the conversation as well.
I don't know that I understand the question. Could you repeat?
So as part of the outreach and education for this, are you guys able to share, you know, which sources of GHG emission are the biggest, and kind of what the breakdown is for people who are attending these meetings? Yes, that's Jerry's right. Yes, Jerry is saying it much more simply than I am. The results of the GHG inventory.
Yes, very much so. So in the beginning of these meetings, everybody that's in the strategy sessions are going to get a rundown of the greenhouse, the GHG inventory breakdown and where it stands. I know some people are asking about it right now. So I will go ahead and just share this other piece real quick. Let me see. So I've got all these screens open, and it's not my office computer where I have all of my stuff. So everybody is going to see, we're going to have a little kind of orientation session, why we're doing this, the equity focused engagement, kind of like we did in all our other strategy sessions. And we are going to have a breakdown. So for those of you that are just seeing our greenhouse gas emissions for the first time, this is our most recent inventory showing our areas where we're going to need to really move the needle. And so we will be introducing them, especially, you know, when we talk to the homes and buildings session, we're definitely going to talk about how we've got, you know, 2.1 metric tons coming out of residential energy, and then another 2.7 in commercial. So that's going to be a big bang for our buck. And we are going to talk about what areas are going to need to be prioritized, the areas we're definitely going to have to move the needle. The idea that Brindle had for us, and they kind of showed it a mock-up to get our internal kind of buy-in in it, but it wasn't complete yet, is sort of a, it's almost like a slider that they're going to have that people can look at. So if these strategies will really move the needle, these will only move them partially. That's kind of how they're going to outline it for everybody in there. So you guys will know when you go into the strategy session what's really going to move the needle. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Knoll.
Got to unmute first. Yeah, so two things. First is in the table. It looked like the far right was talking about funding for like ongoing funding. Did I miss it? Is there a line in there about like initial funding or connection to grant opportunities or whatever else those things may be?
That line is all of it. It's all the
Okay.
funding. So it's going to be talking about how are we going to, is this something the city can put a pot of money in to kick off? Is this something the utilities are going to have to fund? And then once we break down those co-benefits, those supporting actions.
Sure.
So we're hoping that we have people at the table that can be like, oh yeah, Health Forward Foundation could definitely give a grant to support healthy homes and buildings if we're doing X, Y, and Z. That's kind of what we're looking for on that. So it is both
Got it.
ongoing and beginning.
Okay, just the description threw me off a little bit, but that answers my question there.
Yeah.
And then the second part that I've been actually getting messages while we've been sitting here from some of the other climate action KC leaders offering support to drive participation. And I just wanted to hear from you about who you're hoping to have participate in these. Is this something we should be sending out to broad membership or doing targeted asks? What's the best way for us to help?
That is a very good question. Thank you for asking it. At this point, so what we're looking for now are people that can actually come to the table with some sort of background knowledge in this. And we are trying to pull community into this as well. Our climate justice workers are finding those community members that they've spoken to in their processes that really have that perspective and have been working in these spaces. So they have a community perspective on it. But otherwise, we are trying to keep these fairly small. And just because managing a whole lot of people and expectations is going to be really hard.
Sure.
15 to 20 is what we're hoping for each session. And we're hoping for people that really already know this space. So folks that are sitting in this room right now are a great example, but it's not something we want people bringing. Don't bring anybody to the table that's going to have to ask a whole lot of questions to get up to speed on where we are. So. But we are looking for both subject matter experts in that particular area, advocates in that area, advocates in co-areas. So, if mobility, like the whole person is a very important group to have in that particular strategy session, those kind of things. So we just want to make sure that the experts are at the table, but also advocates are at the table.
Gotcha.
And then neighborhood folks. But of course, we're not going to turn anyone away. So these are out in the public and everybody has the ability to sign up for it. And we're not going to turn community away. We're just probably not going to answer all their questions. So there's not going to be a lot of filling in the basics for folks. Bill, did you have a question?
Your last commentary answered it fairly well, Laura. So that takes care of that. So my hand has come back down.
Okay. Any other questions on that strategy prioritization at this point?
I have one more if there's no
Sure.
other questions. One of the things I liked about the Ann Arbor framework was that the strategies got a score at the end based on certain criteria. So I just was wondering if how are we going to have a score, and if not, how are the strategies going to be prioritized, or how do you envision that working?
That is a very good question, and that is not one I can answer at this time, but it's definitely one I will bring back to Brindle. I know that the whole idea was review the data, just what was needed to focus on actions, what's missing, what's being done first, but there's no mention of how we're going to score these on a whole. So I will ask that question and get back to you.
Okay.
Taking notes. Okay. All right. And so if If there are no other questions on this, do you mind if I move into the other plan? Oh, Beto?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Maybe I just misunderstood. You're talking about the Kansas KCMO's Climate Protection Steering Committee Action Plan, not Climate KC, right?
Correct. Yeah, so this
Okay.
plan, we started this plan when we did this plan. What we're doing in order to gain strategies and how we've been running our strategy sessions for this plan is we have these big strategy boards out that lists a whole lot of strategies in each of these action areas. And those strategies were informed by the strategies that were in the Climate Action KC regional plan. So we kind of brought those strategies to the table for people to look at. It's like, this is everything that's in the regional plan, but we understand that the regional plan is covering a much larger area, and some of those strategies aren't necessarily even as relevant to Kansas City. Like there's one on water wells that's probably not going to be that relevant since pretty much everybody here is on KC water. So, and that's kind of where we had people look through those strategies and tell us what was missing from the list of strategies that were already in the regional plan. And then also if there are anything that they're like, I don't really understand why this would be important, we're noting that as well. Because if we can't answer why its particular strategy is going to be important for us, then we're kind of in the same boat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions, but I would love to follow up on this, because I think what I heard right now is that public participation, if they're not well versed, if they're not well educated in the term, not experts, then they really don't have a place in this space. And I think that's part of, like, you know, when we're talking about climate change and climate justice, and you have climate justice workers, this is a critical piece of making sure, even if the person is not an expert on the science or the technical stuff, that they are part of these conversations, and that we can help them understand. And and if it means that meeting needs to be 2 hours so they can understand, I think we need to do that. I think when we want to see these approaches, and we want to make sure this is what we're doing, because the most vulnerable are still the people that might not even be at this meeting, right? The most vulnerable are the ones that are directly close to a facility that's dumping toxins in their community every day. So I think that, and then the Climate KC, using that as an element to drive some of this, I think it's also, if the community member were there and, hey, this is what we're putting forward, without their understanding the risks of some plans that are also kind of, that might further exacerbate pollution, further exacerbate vulnerabilities in these communities by, some of the programs that I've read in this book around offsets and shifting pollution to one community to another. And then also around the net zero thing, right? We know that net zero, I mean, I don't think anyone here can tell me what net zero actually, what is that targeting, what emission greenhouse gas reduction is happening by looking at net zero. So I think that, there's a lot of education. I mean, not even for me and for all of us, I think, in this space, to also listen to those community members that are struggling to keep their lights on every day. They're struggling at the moment, getting shut off, and all this is all connected to this. So I just want to make sure, just as a community member, not as an executive director of an organization, but that we take into account those things, because if we really want to achieve our climate goals, but without having those same people that are most vulnerable at the table, then we're missing the mark. We're literally just missing the mark all the way through. And promoting these solutions that aren't going to have real climate targets, it's really bad for them if they don't understand. Because I've been in the space in another city agency, and the way they frame the questions they're intentionally framed in a way that steers the community member from the actual problem. It actually steers you in a direction of positivity, which in fact, that could be a problem too in the way we design our material. So I just wanted to share that, I'm not criticizing, I just wanted to add that, because this is critical also to the work that our organization does, and making sure that community members have those tools to be able to be at the table, like all of you. They're just equally they're just experts, just like all of us. I mean, they live in those communities. They know firsthand what's happening when they wake up in the morning. You know, they know what's happening 24/7. And a lot of us do not live in these same communities that we are trying to speak for, right? Or we're trying to create these plans for. So just wanted to share that. So thank you.
No, I totally agree, 100%. And when I said, if I said experts in a way that I was meaning specifically experts in this particular science, that's not what we mean at all. We want just as many experts in lived experience. That expertise is just as important at the table. But if it's somebody that just wants to show up because they want to learn more about mobility or something like that, we can do those offline. Like for this particular thing, it is the people. For homes and buildings, we want groups like KC Tenants at the table that have the lived experience. Super important. And that's kind of where our climate justice workers, as they've been talking to people in community about this and hosting those listening sessions, they are finding those people that do bring that lived experience expertise to the table that we definitely need to avoid those unintended consequences. And then for those that have not been in a lot of these meetings, I see a lot of new faces, which I'm loving, all these new faces. The other thing with this is we're getting this strategies laid out, and we've talked to community to get those strategies laid out, but it doesn't stop here. So once we have a plan in hand with our strategies, this is how we're going to reduce our greenhouse gases, then we still have to go back to community to write the policies and create the programs that are actually going to do it. So those things are going to occur even after the plan. We're going to continue to talk with community as we get the plan going and move into the policy making, because that's where the real issues can come in, is when we start having programs and policies. Oh, we're going to put a microgrid in this neighborhood. Well, we're certainly not going to do it without going and talking to the neighborhood and having them at the table and getting them into that conversation. So I agree with you 100%, and I'm super excited that you brought that up. And I think, Beto, we have a meeting in a week or so where we can talk a lot about some of the stuff for the plan. And I want you to be in as many sessions as you're comfortable with.
Or just to quickly connect the dots between
Sure.
my question and Beto's, for the sort of broader public outreach, is there somewhere we should be directing everybody in the meantime, to the online engagement piece or somewhere else?
So our climate justice workers are kind of taking a little bit of a break during this process because they've been out having these community conversations, but they are still available. So if you have people that want to engage online, we are still, all of the sections on our Playbook site are still open. And I'll go ahead and just real quick bring that up, just because I think it's kind of important to the conversation here. Let me bring this up. So our Playbook site, for those of you that are not familiar, the KC Playbook website is actually the same one being used by the comprehensive plan. So this is the main Playbook site, and this is an online engagement tool. So if you go down here, you can go right into the climate protection and resiliency plan. And inside this, there's a listen and learn section here. And though we've passed that phase into the priority phase, people can still share their climate stories with us here. This is where we're getting a lot of really good feedback from those on the ground folks in community saying, hey, this is all well and good, but we have to make sure we're thinking about people's utility bills and the unhoused and those kind of things. So sharing those stories is really useful. We still have our climate map on here up and going. So this is this climate issues and opportunities map is a place where people can actually put climate places where there's opportunity. This is you can actually drop pins in here to show things like, in this case, there are lots of homeless people here. They should build shelters. There's over here, we need more healthy food. This is a food desert. So we have this map where people can put these sort of things that are helping us inform how we're reaching out to community and what the real big issues actually are out here. And then we have, opportunities as well. So somebody would put in that, oh, they've got this great park. It could be used for garden space and vegetation. And there's lots of issues with trash. Why don't we make this an opportunity? So that's a place people can reach out. And we also still have on this site as well, and that'll be up on the Prioritize page. I just haven't gotten done yet, but there's still a climate strategy survey here that anyone can take, and they can literally go in here, tell us which council district, and they can start adding their strategies. What do you want to see? And that's going to be open throughout the plan, and we're going to continue even through the prioritization phase. We're going to continue to listen to what we're hearing on here. So, and that's available. That's the Playbook site that's available to everyone. But we do understand that there are a lot of folks with barriers to being able to use an online site. And so if you have a specific person or group that you want our climate justice workers to reach out to, they're still available for that. So, and they're still available for those climate conversations. And then if it's something that, I can be available for a climate conversation, or Andy or, Jerry for the next couple of weeks can be available for a climate conversation. So we're definitely interested in listening to anybody that wants to add value to the plan. I hope that kind of gave a little bit more for the folks that are attending for the first time. And I think Layla had her hand up. I can't see anymore. Who all has their hand up?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, I really was resonating with what Beto said. I hope I'm saying that correctly, because really it does sound like experts are wanted in the room, and as we're saying, lived experience does matter. And kind of going back, it's connected to my question to the city manager too, because I oftentimes feel like these initiatives are not couched in what is the direct material impact on people's lives. And even seeing, so I just wanted to flag that, and I appreciated your remarks on that, Beto. The second question I had, and I put in the chat as well, is, I understand that community engagement is tough, but is there opportunities to get more resources based on the climate emergency resolution that passed? I know there was a provision in there to review subsidies, and what's the forward plan on that?
Andy, you want to take that one?
Sure. So one of the issues regarding the climate plan and that resolution there, and we talked about this with council and even I think members of this committee, is that the climate plan, we were trying to get further along and or have the solutions and strategies that come out of this plan drive what some of those supporting subsidies are from the city on those programs and plans. So the timing is a little bit off on this, being that this plan is going to be probably brought to council in January or February. And to be honest with you, we are already into the budget season for the city, where we've already submitted what our budget requests are for the next fiscal year. So there's a little bit of an offset on this and the timing goes. So we may need to revisit, some of those strategies and budget considerations in the next budget cycle. However, that just, I would say the jury's not completely out on what we might be able to get in the next budget year. We're talking to some of our executive staff and trying to find a way to highlight some projects or programs that we can go forward with for the next budget year. Just unfortunately, we're trying to still put the climate plan first and forefront. That was one of the considerations with this plan, is we didn't want just this huge laundry list of solutions. We really wanted to identify strategies and solutions that we could use the funds that the city has, which are sort of limited, to really kind of drive some actions in the next fiscal year. So I can't say I've got a complete answer to that question. To be honest with you, we're still, like I said, talking about it internally. The resolution just passed a week or so ago. So more to come on that.
Layla, did we get your questions answered?
I suppose, it sounds like you all, So you, if I'm hearing this correctly, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you all want to get more forward into the process before you fund more community participation, and there's also some mistiming with the budget.
Well, community participation, I was talking more solutions and strategies. The city is already doing other things for community engagement. And so I was speaking more about the solutions and strategies identified by this planning process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when we got this through council during a pandemic, we got limited resources for this process. And then we threw some of our own budget at it to give our climate justice workers a little more time with community as well. So as far as the planning process goes, we're going to see how these strategy prioritization, these topic area work groups kind of fall out at, we might have amazing sessions and everybody's on the same page and we move forward. And of course it might be messy and we might end up having additional strategy sessions. You never know, especially when you're trying to do something from a place of equity. It does take a lot of time, and sometimes you don't get the right people at the table and you have to start over with new people at the table. And we understand that. And that's why we're working to try to get this first set of sessions out of the way and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and to clarify, the budget season for the city, we're on a May 1st budget cycle. So, when you're preparing for city, the budget to kick in on May 1, we're starting that whole process of that budget literally in October of the previous year. So, for this climate plan, we don't know what the specific solutions and strategies are that we want to ask for funding for. I've already missed that window for submitting our budget requests. So, that doesn't mean that once we get into May 1, we have a climate plan hopefully approved in January, February from council, that we can't still go to council in a budget year and ask for funds. They have a certain unappropriated fund that council has access to. So at that point, we can still go to council, ask for specific funding for specific solution strategies or priorities. So I'm not saying that the window is completely closed. It's just we're not appropriated those funds initially. Just means we have to go to council for a specific ask. So hopefully that kind of clarifies that a little bit more. So that's been the pleasure of my experience here, is just kind of navigating the whole administrative, budgetary, and financing of projects that we want to do here in Kansas City on the sustainability side, and it is challenging.
I just want to do a quick time check because I know we've got one more agenda item. So Laura, do you have more to your presentation? Or I know there's at least one other question out there too, but.
I did have a little bit more in my presentation just to give to you guys. The other thing that, and I will send this on to the Climate Protection Steering Committee, I just wanted to bring it up in the meeting. Brindle also sent over just recently a plan mock-up for us to look at, and they want input from the steering committee on this by the 29th if possible. This is just lorem ipsum text, so no need to try to read it, but this is kind of what they envision the final plan to look like. So they wanted to keep the body of the plan short and easily accessible, and then have the technical information in the appendices so that the folks that really wanted to go after the technical information could, but the folks that just wanted to know what we were doing and how we were doing it. So this is kind of the mock-up that they're doing, just an overview of a section, and then the strategies that they have developed for those particular sections. And then you can see down here a little bit how these strategies are helping us achieve our vision. And so that's going to show you each strategy, how far it's going to move the needle on reduction, each strategy and where it's going to get us. And then there's a section in each. So for mobility, where do we stand now? Where do we want to be in 2040? And that's going to have that plan in that it's going to show all of the co-benefits we're going to get out of each of these particular strategies and the action steps that we're going to need to do to meet those strategies. So that's just kind of the overview, of what it looks like. And then we're going to have a spotlight of successful initiatives that may be occurring right now or that are in process going forward. And then we're also going to have a breakdown of the various areas of the city. So we are still doing this based on, South Central and Northland, since what's going to move the needle in those different areas does look a little bit different. So we're still going to have that breakdown. So that's kind of for you guys to just take a look at. It will go out with information after this meeting to everyone who attended the meeting, so you all can look at it. As long as you're on the list Rachel has, you can look at that. And then the other thing that they sent forward was the outline of how the plan is going to look. Also that we want your input on. So this is just kind of the draft outline of kind of how we're going to populate the plan. Introduction, our history of what we've done so far, changing the narrative and what we've been doing from the equity-centered planning process. Where are we now? Just getting people informed about the various climate action areas that we've got. Our call to action, and that's where the call to action, that's where all those strategy pages you just saw, the mobility mock-up, that's where they will be. And then down here in the appendices, we're going to have a summary of our engagement in each of the various areas and all the priority strategies by area. Robin, kind of the way you wanted them broken out there. The greenhouse gas emissions inventory, what is all in there. The climate risk and vulnerability assessment, which they're completing as we speak. And then this is where we're going to have all those scenarios with potential impact by emission source and the range of, versus business as usual, what we're going to get. So this is kind of what they're looking at. And then down here, I know, Layla, you'd asked, but one of the things that we're doing when we're prioritizing these strategies is actually doing a financial and resource analysis on these strategies. So what are the city resources that are going to be needed to implement? And then what other funding sources are we going to need to implement? Obviously, the city can't pay for, Target to upgrade all their buildings. So we're going to have other funding sources identified. And then there's also going to be a template for an annual report so we can keep you guys up to date on our progress each year. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of those two documents before I sent them over to you guys. And then please review, comment, add whatever you'd like, or any questions for Brindle by November 29th. Any other questions? I know it was a lot.
Review, comment, and send those to you?
Yes, I'm sorry. Review, comment, and send them back to me. Thank you. I'll compile them all in a really big list and give it to Brindle all at once because I think they probably get enough emails from us already as it is.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. Appreciate all of that. And I think if anyone else has questions, maybe go ahead and just put them in the chat, but we probably need to move on to our last agenda item. We're already a couple minutes over. So I'd like to turn it over to Kristen to talk about some of the strategies from the Climate Action KC Regional Climate Plan, including tree canopy and energy efficiency. So take it away, Kristen.
Thank you, Robin. My being put on the agenda kind of came out of a offline conversation that Rob and I were having about what our committee is actually doing. And I represent one of the two people that were on the committee for the past several years that are still on the present committee. And it seems to me that we have a new group that hasn't really had a chance to get to know each other under normal circumstances and figure out how we're going to work together. And what I was suggesting originally to Robin is that we could, rather than wait for several months for Laura Ish and her team to complete their work, that we could actually be thinking about how might we approach what we already have, which is the regional plan. And we know that some of the things in the regional plan are going to overlap quite a lot with what is going to be in the KCMO plan. And so can we start thinking now about how we might actually enact or stimulate or whatever it is that we're going to do to help make those plans into realities? And that kind of raises the question of what this group is chartered to do, what the Climate Protection Steering Committee is chartered to do, and how we are going to go about doing it. And I've been on it for a while, and I've also been working with city government for a long time. And so I still have questions about what it is that it is our charter to do. So let me give you a specific example so that you know what I'm talking about. So Bridging the Gap worked very closely with the city's Parks Department and also the Office of Environmental Quality and Mid-America Regional Council on an urban forest master plan for the city of KCMO in like 2018. I think we finished kind of midway through 2018, but we worked on it for a year and a half. We had about 60 citizens involved in the master tree plan. We hired a professional organization, the Davy Group, which has done tree plans for cities of our size and larger across the country. And so we went through this major planning process, and the plan was actually checked off on or signed off on last summer of 2020 by City Council. And we're still basically nowhere in terms of getting the actual funding that we would need to make that urban forest master plan into a reality. So just to give you some specific numbers, right now the city spends a little over $3 million a year on the tree canopy for a very large geographic area. And we estimated that we would need over $8 million a year to actually stop the decline of our urban forest canopy and reverse it and start actually increasing our canopy coverage. So what my experience has been that the budget process for the city is it's still a little bit mysterious. I know there's a meeting of directors that took place in July. We did our best this year to help prepare a couple of directors before they went into the budgeting meetings and say, hey, trees are really important. Can you look at the master tree plan, et cetera? And yet I don't have a high degree of confidence that that budget process is going to actually produce any additional monies for trees. So I think there's and if I may just go on for one more minute, my understanding is that when the city council passes an ordinance or a resolution, that it is then their obligation to fund whatever it is that they've passed. But it has not been my experience that that's what happens. And I certainly invite any of the city staff to correct me if I'm wrong or to add anything that they know about it. My point in all of this is to say, what is our role? How are we going to act in making these plans into realities? I think that it's certainly very important for us to articulate the various positions of the steering committee for the sake of city council. But if we put too much of our faith in city council, I think there's a breakdown between what city council passes and resolves to do and puts ordinances and laws to do, and what actually ends up then turning into funded activity. So I just think, I think, are we as a group going to focus our efforts on educating city council and hoping that then that will translate on into action items? Or do we need to take some other approach? For example, do we need to meet with the city manager and lay out a set of priorities and ask him to make sure that these end up being translated into funded projects. And I know this is all premature because Laura and Jerry and you guys are doing awesome work. And some of these questions are going to come up after your work is completed. But I already have those questions and I want to know what we're going to do for the next 4 to 6 months while we wait for the climate plan to materialize. I hope everybody understands the question that I'm raising. What are we going to do is my question.
I see Michael has his hand.
I would say too, guys, I don't even know exactly what we're chartered to do.
I mean, so if I could offer, I think kind of similar to what we did with the legislative priorities, I think one thing that we could at least consider exploring, and staff will certainly correct me if I get out of line here, is look at the budget season as an opportunity to kind of reiterate places to fund specific improvements. So like that happens, I think, in the first few months of the new year. And sorry if you hear someone in the background, but I would just say that the issue is, if the issue is specifically around funding, the best time to inform City Council of what they should be funding would be in that budget process. So I mean, and the other thing too is that it's not, the way that it's currently set up isn't particularly accessible, and especially with the pandemic, it was not well attended. And I say that as someone who went to like 2 out of 3 of the meetings. But I would just say that if there's something that we as a committee could consider doing, I certainly would like to explore, should we send a similar transmittal letter with like our legislative priorities with regards to potential budget priorities as well. So Laura, Jerry, Andy, if any of y'all want to clarify and tell me that's the wrong approach, please let me know.
No, I'm Michael. That's a great suggestion that I was going to throw out there, is that the budget process is probably one of the better ways that the community and the steering committee can really help direct funding towards those projects or programs that they feel are a priority. I'm not saying that the letter isn't useful as well. You certainly can do that as well anytime. But in the upcoming community engagement sessions on the budget, that's probably your best opportunity at this point.
But Andy, if I can inquire further.
Yeah.
I've been at those budget meetings for years and made presentations about the importance of trees and energy efficiency, blah, 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 blah. Isn't that number one, fairly late in the budgeting process? Those 6 budget meetings that are held like in February, are those the meetings that you're talking about?
Yeah, and I'm not sure when they'll be this year. They've been talking about getting those scheduled. This particular budget season is actually off a little bit. They're even a little later than they usually would like. But no, I mean, when it comes to council is deliberating and finalizing the budget all the way up to March, usually the first week in March. So I mean, there's time. I mean, those sessions are important. And like I said, I still suggest the letters that the steering committee might want to send, but don't discount the value of those. I've been to those as well. I've seen them sometimes make an impact. But I'll be honest with you, sometimes as much public support as there might be on a certain issue, sometimes it doesn't move the needle. I mean, it just depends on the council.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'll also say too, I think that even outside of attending the meetings, I do think that there is value in trying to reach out to individual council members who even if the full council may not like unanimously endorse something, it is helpful to have champions who are willing to push for individual things to move forward. So, I mean, obviously, I think there are folks on the council who care a little bit more about sustainability now. So I think it's important to be having those conversations early on. Yeah, and really quick to Layla's point, I'll just also say I don't know why the mayor is delaying on potential appointments. So we've tried getting some clarification, and we really don't know what's going on. So yeah, I would just say to the folks who are on the committee, and especially the folks in the audience who are wondering about ways that you can influence that, attending the meetings, it really does make a difference, and especially makes a difference because they're not well attended. Again, like that's maybe that's part and parcel for why they're seen as ineffective. But the people who go there, and I'll say especially from the last from this past year, the tenants were the ones who showed up the most at several of the meetings. But I do think that, kind of to Andy's point, if you're wanting to see a real way to kind of get involved and make your voice heard, I definitely think it is wise to attend those meetings if you're able to, or have conversations with your council members on your own if you can.
And if I can clarify also for the general audience here, the point, Kristen, you brought up between ordinances and resolutions, obviously resolution is not binding in terms of law.
Right.
So, as much as council will pass a resolution in support of the climate action plan and or in this case, the urban forest master plan, even when that happened, in particular the urban forest master plan, Kristen, I specifically still remember Councilman Shields bringing that exact point up about how they as council often support these resolutions, but they don't identify the funding for it.
Right.
So they
Right.
recognize that as a problem, that we should not keep passing plans, resolutions for things that they won't fund. So, and yet here it is 2 years later and it's still happening.
I have the utmost respect for how difficult it is to manage a city of this size and complexity. And then on top of that, really overlay the existing problems of the city with a new set of priorities that relate to addressing climate change. It's a big, big issue for not just Kansas City, but every city in the world to try and figure out how do we change what we've been spending money on and what we've been prioritizing into some of these other things that we need to focus on. So I guess I think maybe some things that have already come up in this discussion just in the last 10 minutes, we're all saying then we definitely need to have a significant presence at those budget meetings, whenever they may be, in March or whenever. And I think I heard somebody say a few minutes ago that we also need to maybe do some one-on-one proselytizing in advance of the budget meetings to represent some of the different issues that we know are going to be important, like our green infrastructure, our energy efficiency plans, et cetera. And I wonder if it might not be smart for us to then divide and conquer a little bit, where we go in pairs or something like that and visit with a city council person and we represent a particular issue. And I would certainly be willing to spend some time and effort doing that.
Sounds like a good plan, Kristen.
Agreed. And I believe, Kristen, that the ordinance that created this committee mentions advising on the budget during the budget process. So I think that's well within our charter to do. So I'd be happy to work with any of you on that too.
So I'm supposed to be meeting with Councilman Fowler, who, by the way, was on the Urban Forest Master Plan Committee and was very helpful to us then, and is now working on housing. And I'm supposed to meet with him to talk about energy efficiency to begin with. So I myself would be delighted to be one of the people that meets with various council people on either those issues, either energy efficiency or our green infrastructure, including our tree canopy. I would hope that there would be other experts on our committee who could address, for example, transportation. I'm looking at you, Michael, except I really don't know how to look at you because you're not on my screen right now. But I mean, we really need to be concerted about that and get those meetings set up and get rolling with that if that's what we're planning to do.
I'll also say yes. So yes,
that's a pretty tough face to compete with.
Right. Everyone say hi to our guest attendee, Jade. So what I'll say really quick is that, working through my own organization, I have an idea of which council members are going to care a little bit more about issues related to multimodal transportation than others. And so it's also helpful to know where which districts are from, because that also kind of plays into whether some folks are willing to listen or not, just for everyone in the audience to know. So if folks in the audience who particularly care about transportation and want to know more about, which council members want to hear more from their constituents about it, please reach out to me. Like Kristen, I'm probably planning on doing some outreach anyway, but I'm happy to coordinate with additional folks who care about those issues as well.
And I don't know how anyone else feels about this, but that's another reason why I liked the prioritization framework that has scores for a lot of different criteria, because I feel like that could help sell certain policies with council members, kind of quantifying some of those benefits and making those benefits clear. So just
I agree. I think that prioritization document is really going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, Robin, that's it for me. If we're going to hit the ground and start proselytizing one-on-one, and you guys can help us kind of connect with the right people, I think that it's important for us to hone in on city council people who are sympathetic, but it might also, from a political standpoint, be effective to hone in on a few who might be neutral, but perhaps persuadable into the more sympathetic column. And I know some of the city council people, but not all of them well enough to know which ones would be which.
And Kristen, we'd be happy to help, and so we can share some of our conversations with council to kind of help delineate which ones maybe you can focus on, or maybe shifting conversations as necessary, because we do have conversations that maybe might be relevant to your conversation going forward. So we're happy to help however we can.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, thank you so much, Kristen. Very timely discussion. So is there any other business anybody would like to bring up today? We've just got a few minutes left.
Robin, I might just add, we've had some conversations further about the energy code. We met with Councilman Boo and city planning, and we're going with a due date of having a draft ordinance for the 21 code by middle of December. So that's the current plan.
Okay. Great news. Look forward to that.
Yep.
I will just say, for folks who are interested, obviously the infrastructure bill is not perfect on issues of climate or equity. And so that's why a lot of attention in the coming weeks will likely be on the reconciliation bill, which includes more of the language and potential funding to address some of those issues. So we're not done with watching federal legislation in DC. So stay focused.
Indeed. Anything else? Okay. Thanks again to everyone who came today.
I think Raymond has one more thing.
Hi, Raymond, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. I was just curious, as far as kind of going back to the solar farm plan that the city manager was talking about, I was curious as far as the priorities that have been laid out by both this committee and also with the climate action plan, as far as centering impacted communities and transparency and other issues of of that sort. I was wondering what the committee's plan is to continue to follow those conversations as the city manager has them. I mean, as it sounded, he will be continuing to have those sort of just general conversations with Evergy as that plan moves forward. So I was curious how that, separate from the climate plan as something that's moving forward, is going to be monitored and ensuring that all those principles are still prioritized in those conversations that are behind closed doors.
That's a good question. Does anyone on the staff want to take that, or you want me to try?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to liaison on that with the committee. I'll be at the table with the city manager and Evergy. We've got quarterly meetings set up, I think, starting in December, as the city manager alluded to start discussing that solar farm. And a lot of it is going to depend on the feasibility study once the results start coming back on that. So, as I'm able to share things with the steering committee, I'm going to do so. And as well, I've already asked Brendel to include the solar array into the climate plan for analysis and consideration to make sure that it's kind of captured in that document as we move forward as a resiliency plan or solution.
All right. Any other questions?
If there's nothing else, then I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second. So, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thanks, everyone, for a great meeting. Thanks for everybody who came today. Have a good evening. And next meeting, December 20th. All right. Good night.
Night.
Night.